All right, today we're in chapter 15 of the book of Proverbs, and down at verse 1, where we started last week, where it says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but a grievous word stirreth up anger." And so we spent the time then talking about anger. Now, I might ask you this morning, is anger good or bad? See, we need to stop and think about that. Is anger good or bad? Now, we jump to the conclusion that's bad, because almost every time that you see somebody with anger, bad things happen. And it's kind of like the word lust. If we ask, is lusting good or bad? Then we immediately jump and say, well, it is bad. Because we find that when we are lusting, it's generally after something that doesn't belong to us, and it is a bad thing. But we need to remember that God made man with all of these different emotions and different attributes. Now, when you take the word lust, lest we forget what we're talking about, when Paul talked about the work of an elder, he says, if a man lusteth after that work, then he lusts after a good work. So lusting is good. Paul said that he lusted to die and go be with Christ. So we say, what is lust? Lust is strong desire. It's a strong desire. It's a desire that makes you reach out and try to grab the thing that you are lusting for. Now, when we talk about lust, though, we think, well, it's bad, because generally we're thinking in the sexual realm and thinking about the sin of lusting in that way. But lusting is good. Anger is good. Anger is an emotion that causes us to act, to do something when we see an unjust thing, or when we see something that we believe is an unjust thing. What happens to you if you're walking down the street and you see some guy reach over and grab the purse of some old lady? What do? Do you think, hope he enjoys it? Or do you have an emotion? Or if somebody grabs something out of a little kid's hand, snatches it away and takes off, just immediately you have that emotion that is called anger. Now, anger is an emotion that God built within us that causes us to react in a certain way. It causes every gland in our body to exclude the juices that it's made to do. So all of a sudden, we're just filled, our whole body is just filled with adrenaline and all the other things. And we now are prepared to take action. This is what enables a person to maybe come up on a car that's been rolled over, and they see somebody lying under the car, and they're able to reach down, pick up the car, and get the person out from under it. Now then, 5 minutes later, or the next day, they can't even budge the car. But for a moment, they're given these Superman abilities to act and correct something that is wrong. That's what anger is. Anger is a temporary, very temporary emotion that enables us to correct an unjust thing. Anger is good. But now our problem is this, that when we say, well, lusting is good, now is it good to lust to go to heaven, to have a strong desire to go to heaven and be with Christ? We'd say, oh yeah. Well, if you could take lusting away from the human being, suppose that I had a pill and I could take it away so that you never had any strong desires for anything, what kind of person would you be? Would you be the kind of person that really would make sacrifices to make sure that your life is right with God so that you could go be with Christ? You'd say, no, wouldn't do that. And so if you could take anger away, then you wouldn't try to correct anything. But we misuse them. This is the problem, that we misuse these things. And that's what the Proverbs is going to talk about anger. Now, there is a difference between an individual who sees some unjust thing, he becomes angry, he corrects this, and another person who just goes around being angry all the time. That they're just angry at everything, it seems to be. They're not happy, they're not contented with anything, and we call them an angry person. Now, that kind of a person is a horrible person to themselves and to everybody else, and it is bad. So now, anger, when we talk about anger, that's something that is really, really important for us to consider and understand something about it. Because anger, every one of us has the ability to have it, and it is as dangerous as if you had a rattlesnake in your pocket. Let's suppose that every morning when you get up, regardless of the clothing that you put on, there's a rattlesnake in your pocket. You would be living a dangerous life, wouldn't you? See, you'd be going around and you'd be saying, I need to watch what I do because I don't want that guy to bite me today. It's kind of the way it is with anger, that we need to understand how really dangerous it is. Well, this morning, we're going to continue, we're going to be thinking about this, about anger. Last week, I pointed out, and Scott has also, how do you teach the book of Proverbs? Do you take it subject by subject? Do you take it verse by verse? Where you jump back and forth? Well, in this class, we'll probably take it both ways in doing this. But this morning, we're going to continue on talking about anger because it is such an important thing. Remember last week, I said most books of the Bible have a theme. If you said, what's Colossians about? I can answer, it's about Christ. It tells you where Christ is in God's plan. Ephesians, it's about the church. It tells you where the church is in God's plan. Proverbs. So you start looking and you say, well, it's about 500 different things. You go from verse to verse to verse to verse. Well, if we boiled it down, how could we boil it down and say, what is the book of Proverbs about? What is the theme? Give it to me in one sentence. What does Proverbs talk about? Well, it talks about this and that and that and this and this and that and that and this. It talks about, and so you start talking about 100 different things. But boil it down. What does it talk about? What it talks about is all the things that you have in life that can make you happy. They can either ruin your life or they can make you happy. And that's what it's all about. It's taking these 500 things. When I say 500, I don't have the slightest idea how many things are in the book of Proverbs, but it's taking these things and showing now these are the things. These are the things. I suppose if you boil them down, you probably would find, I'm just going to guess at it, but I'm going to guess 35. 35 different subjects. And these 35 different subjects are things that if we learn how to use them in our life, we can have a happy life. If we don't, we're going to have an unhappy life. And anger is one of those things. So now, this morning, let's take a look at it in this way. Let's take a look and see some verses here that it talks about in anger and what it really does for us. Now, in Proverbs 14, we've already studied about this, but a quick-tempered man acts foolishly. So we say, what does this teach us? Well, it teaches us to be slow to anger, doesn't it? It teaches us not to have a quick temper. It teaches us to not just jump off and let our anger get away from us. quick-tempered is the whole idea that is in here. Now, when you have a quick-tempered man, he's going to act foolishly. Now, the reason for that is simply this, that if I go around and I lose my temper, notice how we have these phrases that we've coined, and I lose my temper quickly, now then I'm getting ready to act, and I'm going to be acting without really thinking through it. And how many times am I going to do that which is wrong? When we think about anger, most of the time, not all the time, because anger is good, as we talked about. Anger enables you to correct a mistake. But most of the time, when we get anger, we jump and we say or do something that is not right. It's foolish. So if you have a quick temper, if you have problems with that, make sure you bring it under control. That's what this verse is saying. If you want to live a happy life, don't be a quick-tempered or a soon angry individual, or you're going to bring all kinds of problems upon you. Another one we've already talked about. He who is slow to wrath has great understanding, but he who is impulsive exalts folly. And that says the same thing. And that's the Proverbs put it in different ways, but really it says the same thing. Only it's just the opposite. The first one is a quick-tempered, acts foolish, and this one is who's slow to anger. So if you are slow to become angry now, if you don't have a quick temper, and you don't just jump in and do or say something, what kind of individual are you? Well, he who is slow to wrath has great understanding. That's an individual that understands what life is all about, understands how to be able to live a happy life. So it's just the opposite of the other one. But he is impulsive. That is, the man that jumps and and starts acting. He exalts folly. He's going to raise folly or foolishness to its extreme. So as we begin to see, your temper, your anger, is going to determine a lot of happiness or unhappiness in your life. Now here we come today to the verse. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Now, a soft anger turns away wrath. If somebody comes up to you and they're really wrathful, they're really angry, and they start in, boy, and they start and they say something to you that is really, it's not true, and they're angry. All right, how do you respond? First of all, how do you want to respond? See? How do you want to respond? This is where if Steve comes up to me and just all of a sudden, why in the world did you do that, Lowell? That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Now, what do I want to do? We all have to understand, well, I want to respond back to him in the same way. But this right here is saying, don't do that. A soft answer turns away wrath. So I need to, instead of saying you too, or accusing him in some way, I need to give him a soft answer. Listen to him. Now what will happen to him if I say, well, Steve, I'm sorry, and I understand why you said that. I understand why you would feel. I'd feel that way too. See, if I were in your shoes. But let me tell you my side, and that's not really what I did. But if I can give him a soft answer, what will that do to him? See? That's going to cause his anger to subside. All that the Proverbs is getting about is this. It's saying, understand that you have the ability to become angry. And understand what you want to do when you become angry is that you want to jump in and do something. And if you act quickly, that's going to cause you problems. Now, if somebody else jumps in and they act quickly, here's how you do it. It's just telling us how to control anger. So, give them a soft answer. But a harsh word stirs up anger. If Steve comes in and he's mad and he's out of control, Lowell, you idiot, why did you do that? And I say, you're just as dumb as I am, Steve. Well, what this is saying is, it's just going to cause him to become more angry. So what we can learn from this verse is this. Can I control Steve's anger? Think about that for just a minute. Can I control his anger? And the answer to that is yes. Okay? Yes. Now, when we're talking about this, there are times when you can't control certain people. But I'm talking about, the Proverbs talk about 99% of the time, yes. Because the very minute that Steve comes in and he's angry with me, and if I turn around and give him a soft answer and tell him I understand and tell him I appreciate it because I know you're a good man, what's going to happen to Steve? Can he then continue on in that same stage of anger? It can't be done. It can't be done. So, if we just stop there, we learn, don't be quick-tempered or you're going to act foolish. Be slow and you'll have great understanding. And when you respond to somebody who is angry with you, you can control it. Do it with a soft word and not with a harsh word. And so we begin to see we do have a lot of power over anger. Now, a wrathful man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger allays contention. Now, here we have a wrathful man. There's a difference between a man who gets angry and a wrathful man. Now, did Jesus ever get angry? He did. Would you say Jesus was an angry man or a wrathful man? No, you wouldn't say that. What's the difference? Somebody who gets angry is somebody who gets angry when they see an unjust thing happening. But a wrathful man is somebody that just carries that on. They live that in life. They learn to control people by it. And we talked about that at length this last week. Many times a husband or a wife will learn to control their mate through anger. If I want Helen to do something, if I will, every time I come in the house and look around and I see that whatever this is not done, I jump all over her. Why in the world? And I start bawling her out. Now, is she going to enjoy that? What will she try to do? Well, she's going to say, I need to correct this. I need to go do what makes Lowell mad. So I come home and I see she's done it. Boy, I finally got her straightened out. And then the next thing she does, and so how do I learn to handle her? See, I learned to handle her through anger. That when she sees that I'm angry, she runs and does what I want her to do. Well, what kind of relationship is that going to give us, see, to start with? And it's a learned skill. Now I've learned to be an angry man. I've learned to control people through my anger. People will dance all around me because they don't want to upset me because I'm an angry or a wrathful man. Now, when you take a man like that, he stirs up strife. That's where it's going to be. There are some people that you know when they get involved in anything, it's going to be an unhappy situation. There's going to be arguments. They love to argue. There's going to be some contentions. And you just don't like to be around that kind of a person because that kind of a person stirs up strife. But somebody who's slow to anger, they will keep control of that temper, then they're going to bring contention down so that it doesn't cause all of that problem. Next, as messengers of death is the king's wrath, but a wise man will appease it. Now, as messengers of death, if somebody came through the door right now and said, Lowell, you have been marked to be killed today. There's guys out here with their AK-47s, and you're a marked man. You're going to be killed today. They're a messenger of wrath. They're a messenger of death. They're showing me I'm going to be killed. Now, if somebody else comes in and they said, Lowell, I want you to know the king is wrathful at you. The king is just absolutely angry at you. Now, we don't have a king in this country, but in the countries where they do have kings, what does a king do to a person? Just cuts off their head, doesn't he? He has them put to death. Well, what he's saying is that if you stir up the king's wrath, it's the same as putting a death sentence on your head. So if you want to do what's right, a wise man will appease it. You're going to immediately do whatever you can do to appease that king. Because when a king gets mad, terrible things can happen. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. Now, let me ask you again. How many times have we seen in here that he's talking about how wonderful it is to be slow to anger? To be slow to anger. Now, some people are happy that they're quick-tempered. They brag about it. Well, I've got a temper. I've got a temper. When somebody does something, I've got a temper. Well, don't brag about it. I mean, bring it under control and be slow. Now, what can you say about a man who is slow to anger? Well, he is better than the mighty. That person is a better man than a mighty, powerful ruler. That's somebody who is a general in the army, who has control to where he can destroy. The man who is slow to anger, he's better than that. And he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. So if you say, wow, we look at the news and we see somebody leading and they're out there and they're leading mobs and they're yelling and they're screaming and they conquer a city. Now in those days, cities had kings over them. And so he goes in and conquers a city, conquers the king, and he now has become the ruler of that city. He now has become the king, the most powerful man in town. No, what this says is there's a man that is better than he is. And who is the person? This guy can rule a city. Here's a guy that has the power and the intelligence to get a group of people together and go in and conquer a city and kill 100 people and take control, and he has that kind of power. But over here's another man, and his power is just to rule himself, just take control of myself. How many people can I control? Nobody. I can't conquer a city. I can't even conquer a human being. The only thing that I can do is I've conquered myself. I have ruled my spirit. I don't let my temper get away from me. When I act with intelligence. When I speak with thought. I don't become angry. Now, he said, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. So that guy in that city, he is the better person. He's the most powerful person that there is there. So if you say, I want to go out and I want to conquer and I want to take control and I want to conquer the most mighty thing that's out there. Very simple. Conquer yourself. take control of yourself so that you've got control of that temper, and then you will have achieved that task. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger. How many times have we seen how wonderful it is to be slow to anger? If you have discretion, if you have understanding, if you are able to see what makes things work in life, if you have all of these things, then that makes him slow to anger. And his glory is to overlook a transgression. Now that's a pretty big statement. Why does a person get angry to start with? It's because we see something that we perceive is unjust, don't we? So if somebody comes to me and they sin against me, and they do something that really hurts me, what is the normal reaction that I have toward that individual? See? It's to become angry. Become angry at the person. Now, I can become angry, and I can justify myself and say, well, the reason that I'm angry is because he transgressed against me. He did this. He said that. He did this to me. And I'm not going to forgive him. I guess one of the most frequently asked questions is, do I have to forgive people if they don't repent? Well, here it is. If you have discretion, you're going to be slow to anger. And it is his glory. It would be to my glory. It would be a great thing if I overlook transgression. So, since we're picking on Steve, he comes up and he does something against me that he shouldn't have done. I say, I'll never speak to him again. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No, there's no glory in that. Any uncontrolled person can act that way. But if you can forgive him, if you can overlook it, if you can say, well, I understand why he feels that way, and you can overlook it, then you're a person that has a great amount of glory. Each one of these is a big, big thing because it's something that affects us whether we know it or not. So how do you feel toward people? Is there somebody in your life that's done something that you're mad at and you don't speak to? Oh boy, how great you are. How wonderful. They've sinned against me and I'm not going to forgive them unless they, and I, oh. Pick you out one. Pick out one of these. Which one is it you like? See? No. There's no glory in that. The glory is that you'll be able to overlook that transgression. Well, moving on rapidly. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment. For if you rescue him, you'll have to do it over again. So here it is. You find a man who's a wrathful man. He's angry. That guy is going to suffer punishment. Now what it says is, even if you rescue him. So here's a guy that is angry. And you're able to rush in and you're able to say what needs to be said and you rescue him and get him out of a problem. What's going to happen tomorrow or next week? He's going to get right back into it again. And so he says, a man of wrath will suffer punishment. That's what you've got waiting on you if you're a wrathful man. You're not going to have a happy life. You're going to suffer punishment. And if your friends get you out of a few cases, you're still going to end up saying and doing things, and you're going to suffer punishment. A gift in secret pacifies anger, and a bribe behind the back, strong wrath. Now this is not encouraging bribery to somebody to do wrong. We generally think with a bribe that if I want something done down at City Hall, I go down and I give the guy a couple $100, and he overlooks the law and I have bribed him. That's not what this is about. This is about Steve and me. Now, Steve is really mad at me, really angry at me. What do? I come back with a gentle answer. Second thing, what do? I overlook what he's done to me. Third thing, what do? I do him good. I give him a gift. I take him out to dinner. I do something to him that's good. Now, what's Steve going to do to me? Here it is. He's all in the wrong. I'm in the right, as usual. Now, here it is. What's he going to do? He comes up and he says this horrible thing. And I return with a kind answer. And then I overlook it and go on about my business and go on about his, and we continue to be friends. Then I take him out to dinner. What kind of dinner are we going to have? It's going to be a happy occasion, isn't it? See? Now, if I'm angry and I respond that way, we're going to be divided then. Take no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go. Don't run around with any of these kind of guys, lest you learn his way and set a snare for your soul. So don't become friends with angry people. Don't associate and become friends with them, because if so, you pick up their traits and you can become an angry person. Remember, Paul said evil companionship corrupts good morals. Well, that's what this is all about. Wrath is cruel and anger a torrent. But who is able to stand before jealousy? So now we'll not talk about the last one right there now, but this is talking about the other. That wrath is cruel. When you become wrathful, that's a cruel thing that you've got on your soul. And anger is like having a torrent. It's like having a flooding river to go through you. And it says jealousy down here is even worse than that. It tears you up even worse than that. But what is anger? If you've got anger, you've got something in your life that is very, very cruel. Scoffers set a city aflame, but wise men turn away wrath. Now, a scoffer is an ignorant person who makes fun of religion is the idea, the best idea that I can get in that word. Ignorant person making fun of religion, a know-it-all. So this know-it-all is not going to listen, and what they do is they just set a city aflame. They just cause trouble everywhere they go. But a wise man will just do the opposite and take away wrath. Now, an angry man stirs up strife, but a furious man abounds in transgression. Again, we've talked about this, and I'm putting all these together so that we can see it. An angry man, that's a guy who goes around angry. He's just angry. What happens to angry people? They stir up strife. Everywhere they go, people don't like them, and they'll stir up contention and strife. And if they're furious, if they really get angry, they'll just abound in transgression. So as you're thinking about anger, get control of it. For as the churning of milk produces butter, and wringing of the note produces blood, so the forcing of wrath produces strife. Have you ever seen these butter churns where you crank the churn and you take the cream and you put in it, and it just takes that cream and it churns it? Or you put it in a quart jar and you shake it back and forth and you end up with butter. Well, he said, if you wring somebody's nose, go up and wring, you're going to end up with blood. Those are proven things. Now, if you force your wrath, you're going to produce strife. That's what will be there. All right, to bring it to a conclusion, the New Testament says, be angry. There are times that you get angry, times it's justified, but do not sin. When you get angry, don't say the wrong thing. Make sure that you have a soft answer. Make sure that you just do what needs to be done. and then you bring it under control. Let not the sun go down on your wrath. Get it under control and do it today. And in all this, don't ever give place to the devil where he can cause you to stir up strife and such things as this and cause problems. So anger in the book of Proverbs, anger in our life, anger can mean we either live a happy or an unhappy life, and it all depends on how we use it. Okay, class dismissed.